Good afternoon on what is a cool, grey and overcast day. It is Monday the 5th of September and I'm in the reading nook with a nice hot cup of tea. And a parcel to unbox. So, right, let's open it, let's find out what's in here. Glue is really sticky on this. Oh, what I have got is this. This is Heinrich's Call of Cthulhu Guide to Character Creation, a solo and group aid to generating characters by Heinrich D. Moore. And it says, I would not write about ordinary people because I am not in the least interested in them. Quoting appropriate quote from H.P. Lovecraft himself. So, creating a Call of Cthulhu investigator should be as exciting as the investigations in which they partake. Unfortunately, the frequency with which investigators perish means often falling back on familiar tropes for creating characters. Heinrich's Call of Cthulhu Guide to Character Creation breaks the cycle by providing tools to ensure that every investigator is unique and interesting to play, for however long they may survive. Heinrich's Call of Cthulhu Guide to Character Creation is a tool for solo and group play, session 0, and creating your campaign. It contains 150 pages, hundreds of events, and 17 players' handouts to develop your investigator's backstory. Now, there are, of course, Call of Cthulhu is a game where you have sort of like a number of set different occupations which kind of are traditional: antiquarian, private eye, journalist, author, professor, and the like, that are seen as the most Lovecraftian of roles. And they tend to be it can get a bit cliched when it comes to their play and their presentation of essentially their role playing by the players in the game. And it can be sometimes difficult to come up with interesting characters that you want to play. And in some ways, the game itself, is off-putting to that end, because there's a possibility that your character might die, your investigator might die. But creating interesting player characters, creating interesting investigators, is a skill in itself, and it requires a bit of detail and research and depth. I had some experience of doing this for the Masks of Nyarlathotep companions several years ago. I created about 30 pre-generated investigators of a variety of different backgrounds and interests that would all be sort of like would bring something interesting to the campaign. So this is a book which hopefully will help you do that. So it's a nice hardback. It's available in different formats. And we open up and we've got acknowledgements and author information before we have a full list of the photos and artwork used in the book, and that's quite an extensive list. And this book is essentially the equivalent of the central casting books that I believe a publisher will put out, mostly designed by Janelle Case back in the 80s. Flying Buffalo, I believe. But here we have an introduction and overview and a note on Pulp Cthulhu with a chapter sort of how to play, how to roll, how to record results, and essentially how to create a character and their skills and create their occupations, hit points, sanity points, magic points, and the like, luck and numbering, and a description of what's not in this guide. So it needs to be used in conjunction with the investigator's book. But here we start off with nationality, country of origins. So that's the first thing established. And get straight into the process. Ancestry, sexual status, place of birth, and so on. Birth events. So you are creating quite a lot of background to the character, which may or may not come into play depending upon just how long they last before they're either rendered limb from limb or insane, even temporarily. And then what happens in the investigator's childhood, with childhood events, and then adolescence and so on. Simple rolls, percentile dice. So, for example, let's have a look. Childhood events. 31. The most beautiful child. You're almost preternaturally beautiful and remain that way as you grow up. Assign your highest remaining character's value to act. Record one of the following under potential occupations: actor, film star, or entertainer. So what we have here is, sort of like it's not just a random background generator, but it's sort of like pushing sort of like suggesting outcomes from these roles. For example, family structure, group care. Shortly after being born, you were placed into the orphanage or lived with a series of foster parents before eventually aging out of state care. Alternatively, depending on your country of origin, you may have been raised in a creche. Do not roll on the table distinguishing features, for example. And I've got a table there for siblings as well. And then when you're adolescents, you're looking at your religiosity and the associated fervour with it, and adolescent events. So, for example, you had a part-time job, select from the following part-time occupations. So, zookeeper, animal trainer, student, intern, secretary, labourer, unskilled, book or antique dealer, laboratory assistant, reporter, or private investigator, and recorded a skill associated with that. Why do you have that skill? Oh, well, in my youth, and then we get into adulthood, and schooling and education events. So, military academy, whether by circumstance or choice, you enrolled in military academy for officer training. After resolving the event, roll twice on table military occupations and record the results under potential occupations. So, you are, you again pushing or guiding your investigator to be towards to the point where he's ready to investigate. And what this kind of reminds me of a little bit is sort of like it's the life path system from Cyberpunk 2020, or the character generation system in Star Trek role-playing game from FASA, where you roll a character up until the point where he was ready to assume the role he was going to play aboard ship. But this again just essentially pushes you towards the point where you are ready to play, not necessarily not ready to assume a particular role prior to character generation, but really created through character generation. Okay, so family life events. You might have mental illness in the family member or love interest develops a mental illness, possibly inherited as a result of an accident or something they witnessed. C13, table 13B for mental illness, and again that's entirely in keeping with Lovecraft's background himself, because there was mental illness in the family with his father, and that affected him, of course, as it would. So you've got further events of adulthood, like bequeathment. You are bequeathed an object of power, and then roll on table 16D artifacts and so on. They're just expanding detail and so on, and then we get into depending upon how old your character is, middle age and beyond. Essentially, and you go basically to finishing touches, and you have events of adulthood, and then we've got details for your personal description, occupational and non-occupational skills and so on. Pulp talents are taken into account here, but of course you'll need to refer to Call of Cthulhu for the pulp talents and Call of Cthulhu core rulebook for everything else. So we've got personal description, character traits, ideologies and beliefs. Now, of course, you as the player creating this character don't have to abide by any of these rules, because essentially you could have some quite odd ones which don't quite fit well together, or perhaps that's by design. They don't fit well together, and you've got to try and explain why you have them and when they're at odds with each other. Then we've got people. And things like being hospitalised, and that's quite a possibility in the 20s, when this really is kind of set 20s and 30s, because disease was there was more chance of disease and injury and so on, especially if you'd been through the Great War. You might have been institutionalised. So there's a table for that. And asylum events might be that, let's have a look. Walls cannot contain your imagination. You escape every day life in the asylum by entering a world of imagination and dreams. Discard any copies of player handouts to the disturbed. Roll 1d4 to see what happens. You undergo a fundamental breakdown with reality, and therefore have to roll on a bout of madness table. You experience a series of visions. So you go to special events, or enter a world to escape from this one, refer to the Dreamlands. So you can actually begin the game with prior experience with madness, prior experience with the Dreamlands, and it's not all new to you. And some of the artwork, of course, does veer of course into the horror and the weirdness. And then we have meaningful locations, treasured possessions, and these are filling in elements of the character's background, which are around which they can key their survival or sort of like their ability to withstand the effects of the mythos. And then potentially you could come into possession of arcane tome spells and artifacts. So might be a copy of the Golden Bough, or the Witch Cult in Western Europe. Witch Cult in Western Europe is an actual book, and would have been reasonably available at the time. Encounters with strange entities, so prior encounters with oddities, potentially with the mythos there. So cosmic horror events. In the service of time, for 5 years of your life, your consciousness is exchanged with a tentacled, conically shaped time traveller, all of which your consciousness is returned to its own body. When the time traveller inhabits your body, your consciousness is trapped millennia in the past in an alien body, left to wander archival halls in great black stone towers. You still have nightmares of that time. Gain 5% mythos skill. Take player handout the Disturbed. Roll on table 13D, Bout of Madness. Also take player handout 13, the Invitation. And record that you may refer to Australia on expeditions in connection with this player handout, should you wish to seek the place your mind was trapped. And there we have a potential connection to the Australia chapter of Master of Nyarlathotep. So what you could do, what a keeper could do, is actually use this to really create and tailor player characters, investigators, to a campaign. And it's fantastic that sort of like the author has gone through this and tailor-made some of the entries from according to Call of Cthulhu canon to its great campaigns and so on. And it's a nice touch. Then we get on to occupations. There's a whole list of these. So a little corner store. A death in the family of someone close to you, or perhaps entirely unknown to you, results you inherit a small business. Roll 1d6 to learn about the business you inherit. Record that company occupation under potential occupations. So, book dealer, funeral home, store, a bar or a restaurant, or a garage, or an antique store. Skills. You'll have developed some skills already, presumably as part of the process. But here we've got a full list of sort of like skills that you might pick up randomly. You of course could be subject to misfortune, served in the military. My only issue there is we've got all this quite period artwork, and this is quite modern. Would have been interesting to see sort of like a more period piece, given artwork like that. That one's sort of like sticks. That's a bit of sort of that feels like it feels a little aberration. It's an anachronism. Religion, again, developing a religious experience, again, just more background, more flavour, more detail. This is an absolutely fantastic book. I'm looking forward to digging into this. Chances that you can have a romance. Not something you always necessarily think about when it comes to your Call of Cthulhu investigator, because you might have had this previous life, but what you're doing now is more important. well, the romance might continue. Your investigations might imperil that, and then again, if you suffer the effects of the mythos, either physically or mentally, it might well be that your loved one picks up where you left off to find out what happened to you. Then again, were you involved in crime? Did you go on an expedition? So various places. Were you involved with a secret government agency? So there we have a sort of like a very early Man in Black. Did you end up in the Dreamlands? Or another dimension altogether? And we've got a table of names. So male, female, gender neutral, family names, a relatively short table, and then miscellaneous different tables for adding further detail and colour to your character. Keeper's tomes, so this is a section, you know, special events, presumably that the keeper can take inspiration from. This is essentially it's really for the keeper's eyes, unless you are referred to there. So that could be special events, mentors, upbringing, kidnapped, curious neighbours, imaginary friends, fringe beliefs, so on that you've all got involved in. And then we've got the player handouts at the end there. So this is available on the on the Miskatonic Repository, and now we've got an index of the tables. And we've got a complete investigator backstory sheet as well. That's useful, as well as a classic sheet. So yeah, this is Heinrich's Call of Cthulhu Guide to Character Creation, an expanded guide to character creation, kind of drawing on earlier books, sort of like, the 7th edition does expand character creation quite a lot. This pushes it even further, and really fills in a lot of the details for your investigator that you might not necessarily have thought of. Anyway, thanks for watching another unboxing in the Nook. If you've enjoyed this, then please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking time to post these. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see me out here with a parcel containing a book or game which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Then please do hit that subscribe button down below. In the meantime, thanks again for watching. We'll be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.